Dr. Hyunwoo Park wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stared at the computer screen. The numbers made no sense. His fingers moved quickly across the keyboard, checking the data again and again. Something was wrong with the readings from the deep space scanner. "So Young, come look at this," he called to his partner across the research lab. Dr. So Young Kim rolled her chair over to Hyunwoo's workstation. Her dark eyes narrowed as she studied the display. "What am I looking at?" "A distress signal from the Kepler 442 system," Hyunwoo said. "But look at these biological readings. The pain indicators are off the charts," So Young frowned. The signal showed vital signs that belonged to no known species in their database. Heart rate was extremely high. Brain activity showed patterns consistent with severe trauma. Most disturbing were the neural readings that suggested something was actively feeding on the creature's nervous system. "This has to be a mistake," So Young said. "Nothing could survive this level of trauma." "That's what I thought too, but I've run the scan 5 times. The signal is real and it's coming from an uncharted part of the system." The door to the lab slid open and Captain Lee Dong-min walked in. He was a tall man with graying hair and tired eyes. Running a deep space research vessel for 3 years had aged him more than he cared to admit. "What's got you two so excited?" Captain Lee asked. "I could hear you talking from the corridor." Hyunwoo turned his screen toward the captain. "We picked up a distress signal, but the biological data is unlike anything we've seen before." Captain Lee studied the readings. His expression grew serious as he realized what he was looking at. These pain levels would kill most species within minutes. "Exactly," So Young said. "Which means either our equipment is broken or something out there is suffering beyond imagination." The three of them stood in silence for a moment. The research vessel Perseverance had been mapping this star system for 2 months. They had found nothing but dead rocks and gas clouds. This was their first sign of life. "How far is the signal source?" Captain Lee asked. "About 6 hours at maximum speed," Hyunwoo replied. "But Captain, we need to consider the risks. This could be a trap." So Young nodded in agreement. "The Galactic Council has strict rules about investigating unknown species without proper protocols. We could lose our research license." Captain Lee walked to the lab's large window that looked out into space. The stars seemed peaceful from this distance, but he had learned that space was rarely as calm as it appeared. "What does your gut tell you?" he asked Hyunwoo. "That something intelligent is in agony and needs help?" "And you, So Young?" She hesitated. "My training says we should report this to the council and wait for instructions. But that could take weeks. And by then whatever is sending this signal might be dead," Captain Lee said. He made his decision quickly, the way he always did in difficult situations. "Set course for the signal source. I'll inform the crew." So Young grabbed the captain's arm. "Sir, if the council finds out we deviated from our mission parameters without authorization, then I'll take full responsibility," Captain Lee interrupted. "But I won't have the death of an innocent being on my conscience." 6 hours later, the Perseverance dropped out of faster-than-light travel near a small asteroid field. The distress signal was much stronger now. On the main screen, they could see a small metallic object drifting between 2 large rocks. "It's an escape pod," announced Tae Hyun-yu from the engineering station. "Design is unknown. The hull appears to be made from some kind of biometal." "Life signs?" Captain Lee asked. "One occupant barely alive," reported the ship's medical officer. "Heart rate is erratic. Neural activity shows extreme distress." "Bring it aboard," Captain Lee ordered. "Full contamination protocols." The escape pod was small, about the size of a shuttle. As the ship's tractors guided it into the cargo bay, everyone gathered around the monitors to get their first look at an unknown alien species. When the cargo bay doors sealed and atmosphere was restored, Captain Lee led a small team to examine the pod. Hyunwoo brought his portable scanners while So Young prepared medical equipment. The pod's surface was smooth and warm to the touch. It seemed to pulse with a faint inner light. After several minutes, Taehyun found what appeared to be an opening mechanism. "Stand back," Captain Lee warned as the pod began to open with a soft hiss. Steam poured out as the pod's atmosphere mixed with the ship's air. When it cleared, they got their first look at the occupant. The creature was roughly humanoid but covered in what appeared to be white fur. It had an elongated snout and pointed ears like earth wolves but walked upright on 2 legs. Most disturbing were the thousands of small crystalline growths covering its entire body. "My God," So Young whispered. "Those aren't growths. They're parasites." The crystalline creatures were about the size of earth barnacles, but they pulsed with an inner light that matched the creature's heartbeat. Each pulse seemed to cause the wolf-like alien tremendous pain. The alien's eyes opened slowly. They were a pale blue color, almost white. When she saw the humans standing around her, she tried to speak but only managed a weak whimper. "It's okay," Hyunwoo said gently, not knowing if the creature could understand him. "We're here to help." The alien tried to lift one arm, but the effort was too much. The parasites covering her limb glowed brighter, and she collapsed back into the pod with a cry of agony. So Young quickly scanned the creature with her medical tricorder. "These parasites are feeding directly on her nervous system. They're literally eating her alive from the inside." "How is she still conscious?" Taehyun asked. "I don't know," So Young admitted. "Any other species would have died from shock hours ago." Captain Lee knelt beside the pod. The alien's breathing was shallow and rapid. Her white fur was matted with what appeared to be her own blood where the parasites had burrowed deepest. "We need to get her to the medical bay immediately," he said. "Can we move her safely?" "I'll prepare a neural dampening field," So Young replied. "It might reduce the pain during transport." As they carefully moved the dying alien to the ship's medical facility, Hyunwoo couldn't stop thinking about the distress signal. How long had this creature been drifting in space, slowly being consumed by these parasites? How had she even survived long enough for them to find her? More importantly, what kind of species could endure such suffering and still cling to life? He had no idea that they had just rescued someone who would change everything they thought they knew about compassion, survival, and what it truly meant to never give up hope. The Galactic Council Medical Station Harmony was the largest medical facility in known space. Its gleaming white corridors stretched for miles in every direction. Ships from dozens of different species docked here daily, seeking treatment for ailments that their homeworlds could not cure. Captain Lee Dongmin walked quickly through the main corridor, his boots echoing off the polished floors. Behind him, a medical transport hovered silently, carrying the unconscious alien they had rescued. So Young Kim walked beside the transport, monitoring the creature's vital signs on a portable scanner. "Her condition is getting worse," So Young said quietly. "The parasites are spreading to new areas of her nervous system." The alien had been unconscious for the entire 3-day journey to Harmony Station. The medical bay of the Perseverance simply did not have the equipment needed to deal with such a complex case. Their only hope was the advanced medical technology of the Galactic Council. They arrived at the emergency medical center where Dr. Ji-hoon Choi was waiting for them. He was one of the few humans working at the station, having earned his position through years of exceptional service. "What do we have?" Dr. Choi asked as the transport was wheeled into Examination Room 7. "Unknown species covered in parasitic organisms that appear to be feeding on neural tissue," So Young explained. "We've managed to keep her stable, but just barely." Dr. Choi activated the room's advanced scanners. Immediately, holographic displays filled the air around the examination table, showing detailed images of the alien's internal structure. What they saw made everyone in the room go silent. The parasites had spread throughout the creature's entire nervous system. They were not just feeding on neural tissue, they were actively replacing it. Crystalline structures had grown along major nerve pathways, creating a secondary nervous system that seemed designed to maximize pain. "This is incredible," Dr. Choi whispered. "And horrible. These parasites are keeping her alive specifically so they can continue to torture her." A tall insect-like alien entered the room. This was Dr. Vexthul, the chief medical officer of Harmony Station. His forearms moved independently as he studied the holographic displays. "Fascinating," Vexthul said in his clicking voice. "I have never seen such sophisticated bioengineering. These parasites show clear signs of artificial design." "Can you help her?" Captain Lee asked. Vexthul's compound eyes turned toward the captain. "Help is a relative term, human. We can study this specimen to better understand the parasites. The knowledge gained could be quite valuable." "She's not a specimen," So Young said angrily. "She's a living being in pain." "The distinction is largely irrelevant from a medical standpoint," Vexthul replied. "The parasites have integrated too deeply into her nervous system. Any attempt to remove them would result in immediate death." Dr. Choi frowned at his superior's cold response. "Surely there must be something we can try. Some experimental treatment or surgical procedure." "The cost would be enormous," Vexthul said. "We would need to dedicate an entire medical team for months, possibly years." The station's resources are limited. A new voice spoke from the doorway. And the Galactic Council does not waste resources on lost causes. Everyone turned to see Council Representative Zorhan entering the room. The massive, stone-like being moved slowly but with obvious authority. His presence filled the room with an oppressive weight. This creature belongs to an unknown species, Zorhan continued. They have not petitioned for council membership. They contribute nothing to our civilization. There is no logical reason to expend significant resources on a single individual. But she's suffering, Captain Lee said. Doesn't that matter? Suffering is a fact of existence, Zorhan replied. The council cannot save every creature in the galaxy that experiences pain. We must prioritize our efforts based on logical criteria. Tae-Hyun Yu had been quietly recording the entire conversation on his personal device. He stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. So you're just going to let her die because it's not profitable? Zorhan's stone face showed no emotion. We will make her as comfortable as possible until the inevitable occurs. That is the extent of our obligation. Dr. Choi looked uncomfortable. There might be other options. I could reach out to some colleagues, see if anyone has experience with similar parasites. You will do no such thing, Vexthul said firmly. This case is officially classified as untreatable. Any resources devoted to it would be considered waste of council property. As if summoned by the argument, another alien appeared in the doorway. This one was aquatic, moving in a transparent water-filled mobility suit. Dr. Kyle-An was known throughout the station for her healing abilities. I heard there was an unusual case, she said. Her voice filtered through the suit's communication system. May I examine the patient? You may observe, Vexthul said, but do not consider any treatment options. The case has been deemed hopeless. Dr. Kyle-An floated closer to the examination table. Her large, dark eyes studied the unconscious alien with obvious compassion. After several minutes, she spoke quietly. The pain this creature must be experiencing is beyond measure. In my culture, we believe that allowing such suffering to continue is the greatest sin. Your culture is not relevant here, Zorhan said. Council policy is clear. Then your policy is wrong, Dr. Kyle-An replied, surprising everyone with her boldness. The room fell silent. No one openly challenged council policy, especially not in front of a council representative. Zorhan's voice became dangerously quiet. You forget yourself, Doctor. The council's wisdom has maintained peace and order for thousands of years. Individual suffering is unfortunate but ultimately insignificant compared to the greater good. Captain Lee felt his hands clench into fists. Everything about this situation was wrong. A living being was dying in agony, and these supposedly advanced civilizations were debating cost-benefit ratios. What if we took her back to human space? He asked. Would the council object to us attempting treatment on our own? Human medical technology is primitive compared to ours, Vexthul said dismissively. If we cannot help her, you certainly cannot. But you're not even trying, So Young said. We are being realistic, Zorhan replied. Something humans have never been particularly good at. Tae-Hyun stepped forward again, his recording device still active. So let me make sure I understand this correctly. You have the most advanced medical technology in the galaxy, but you won't use it to save one life because she doesn't belong to a council species. That is correct, Zorhan said without hesitation. And you see nothing wrong with that? I see efficiency and logical resource allocation. Captain Lee had heard enough. He moved to the head of the examination table and looked down at the alien's peaceful face. Even unconscious, her features showed the strain of constant pain. Then we'll take her back, he said quietly. I beg your pardon? Vexthul asked. We're taking her back to human space. If you won't help her, we will. That is foolish and pointless, Zorhan said. You will only prolong her suffering. Captain Lee looked the massive alien directly in what passed for eyes. Maybe, but at least we'll try. As they prepared to leave the station, Tae-Hyun made sure his recording device had captured everything. The galaxy needed to see how the Great Galactic Council treated those who needed help most. Behind them, the alien continued to suffer in silence, unaware that her fate would soon spark a revolution in how the galaxy viewed compassion and sacrifice. The underground medical facility on New Sol Colony looked nothing like the gleaming halls of Harmony Station. Dr. Yoonji Nam had built it in the basement levels of an old mining complex, far from the eyes of Galactic Council inspectors. The walls were rough concrete and the lighting came from simple work lamps strung along the ceiling. But what the facility lacked in beauty, it made up for in heart. Dr. Nam had spent 15 years treating patients that other doctors had given up on. She specialized in the impossible cases, the ones that medical textbooks said could not be cured. "Bring her in here," Dr. Nam called as Captain Lee's team carried the alien through the facility's main door. "I've prepared isolation room 3. The alien had grown worse during the journey from Harmony Station. The crystalline parasites now covered 90% of her body. Even unconscious, she whimpered constantly from the pain. Dr. Minho Cha was already waiting in the isolation room with his biochemical analysis equipment. He was the colony's best expert on alien biology, having studied samples from over 200 different species. "Have you ever seen anything like this?" Dr. Nam asked as they placed the alien on the examination table. Dr. Cha shook his head. "Nothing even close. These parasites are like nothing in our databases. They appear to be part biological, part mechanical." So young Kim connected her portable monitors to the facility's main computer system. "Her vital signs are getting weaker. I don't think she has much time left." "Then we better work fast," Dr. Nam said. She had seen too many beings die from conditions that might have been treatable, given enough time and resources. This time would be different. While the medical team began their analysis, Security Chief Jae Sung Kang was making contact with his underground sources. He met Na-Young Shin in a dark corner booth of the colony's main cantina. Na-Young was one of the best information brokers in human space. She dealt in secrets that governments tried to hide, and knowledge that corporations would kill for. If anyone knew about these parasites, it would be her. "Crystalline organisms that feed on neural tissue," Na-Young repeated after Jae-Sung described what they had found. "That sounds familiar." She pulled out a small datapad and scrolled through encrypted files. After several minutes, her face went pale. "I think I know what those things are," she said quietly. "But you're not going to like it. Tell me." "They're called Nexus leeches. They were created about 5,000 years ago by a species called the Void Wraiths. The Wraiths used them as a torture device for their enemies." Jae-Sung felt his blood turn cold. "Torture device?" "The parasites were designed to keep victims alive while causing maximum pain. The Wraiths would attach them to prisoners and leave them for months or years. The parasites would slowly replace the victim's nervous system while amplifying every pain signal by a factor of 10. That's barbaric. The Void Wraiths were not known for their compassion," Na-Young said. "They went extinct about 3,000 years ago, but some of their bioweapons survived." Meanwhile, Communications Officer Yu Jin Lee was busy spreading word of their rescue throughout human space. She had posted the story on every news network and social media platform she could access. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Messages of support poured in from across the Sol system. Medical researchers offered their expertise. Private citizens donated money for treatment costs. Retired military officers volunteered to provide security if the Galactic Council tried to interfere. "Look at this," Eugene called to Captain Lee. "The governor of Mars Colony just authorized the use of their medical research facility, and the Europa Science Station is sending their best xenobiology team." Captain Lee smiled for the first time in days. This was what he loved about humanity. When faced with suffering, humans did not calculate costs or political consequences. They simply helped. Back in the isolation room, Dr. Nam and Dr. Cha were making their first breakthrough. The parasites appeared to have a weakness that no one had discovered before. "The crystalline structure is not as stable as it appears," Dr. Cha explained. "It's held together by a complex protein matrix that might be vulnerable to certain Earth bacteria." "What kind of bacteria?" Dr. Nam asked. "Bacteriophages, specifically ones that target protein structures similar to what we're seeing here." Dr. Nam thought for a moment. "We'd need to modify them significantly, and we'd need a way to deliver them throughout her entire nervous system without killing her." "There might be a way," Dr. Cha said, "but it would require something we don't have." "What?" "Human adrenaline. Large quantities of it. The hormone seems to create a hostile environment for the parasites. If we could synthesize enough of it and combine it with the modified bacteriophages, we might be able to create a treatment." The problem was that producing the amount of adrenaline they needed would require blood donations from dozens of volunteers, and not just any volunteers. They would need people willing to undergo procedures that would temporarily drain their bodies of the hormone. "Pilot," Wu Jin. Han was the first to volunteer when Dr. Nam explained what they needed. "How dangerous is it?" he asked. "You could go into shock. Your body might not recover properly. In the worst case, you could die." Wu Jin did not hesitate. "When do we start?" Within hours, volunteers began arriving at the facility. Medic Sun Hee-ro organized the donation schedule. Technician Kyung Ho Bae set up the extraction equipment. Soon they had a steady stream of humans willing to risk their health to save a complete stranger. The alien still lay unconscious on the examination table, unaware of the sacrifice being made for her. The parasites continued to pulse with their cruel light, feeding on her pain even as she slept. Dr. Nam worked through the night, combining human adrenaline with modified bacteriophages. The process was delicate and dangerous. One mistake could create a toxin that would kill their patient instantly. As dawn broke over New Seoul Colony, she finally had a working treatment. It was untested and experimental, but it was their only hope. "Are you ready?" she asked Dr. Cha. He nodded. "Let's save her life." Outside, Galactic Council ships were beginning to arrive in the system. They had come to stop the humans from attempting their foolish rescue mission. But they were too late. The treatment was ready, and nothing would prevent the humans from trying to heal a broken soul that the galaxy had abandoned. Dr. Yoonji Nam stared at the vial of modified treatment in her hands. 3 days of non-stop work had led to this moment. The pale blue liquid contained the hopes and sacrifice of dozens of humans who had given their blood to help a stranger. "The bacteriophages are stable," Dr. Min-ho Cha reported from his analysis station. "They should target the protein matrix that holds the parasites together without affecting her natural tissue." "And the adrenaline synthesis?" Dr. Nam asked. "Complete. We have enough to flood her entire nervous system. The hormone should create an environment hostile to the parasites while protecting her natural neural pathways." The alien they called Kethara lay motionless on the examination table. Her white fur had turned gray in places where the parasites had drained the most life from her. The crystalline creatures pulsed steadily, unaware that their hold on their victim was about to be challenged. Captain Lee Dong-min entered the room carrying a communication tablet. His face was grim. "The Galactic Council has issued an official cease and desist order," he announced. "They're demanding we turn the patient over to them immediately." "On what grounds?" Dr. Nam asked. "Unauthorized medical experimentation on an unknown species. They claim we're violating 17 different interstellar treaties." Security Chief Jae Sung-kang spoke up from his position near the door. "My sources say Council enforcement ships are already in the system. They'll be here within the hour." Dr. Nam looked at the treatment in her hands, then at the dying alien on the table. "How long do we have?" "Maybe 40 minutes before they arrive," Jae Sung said. "After that, they'll shut us down and confiscate everything." "Then we start the treatment now," Dr. Nam decided. "But we haven't finished all the safety tests," Dr. Cha protested. "We don't know what the side effects might be." "We know what happens if we do nothing," Dr. Nam replied. "She dies in agony." Communications officer Yoo-jin Lee was monitoring human news networks from her station in the corner. "The story has gone viral across human space," she reported. "There are protests outside council offices on Earth and Mars. People are demanding they let us try to save her." "Fat lot of good that will do us," muttered pilot Woo Jin-han. He was sitting in a recovery chair, still weak from donating the maximum safe amount of blood for the adrenaline synthesis. Despite his condition, he had refused to leave the facility. "Actually, it might help more than you think," Yoo-jin said. "Human shipping companies are refusing to carry council supplies. 3 colonies have closed their ports to council vessels. The economic pressure is building." Dr. Nam prepared the injection system while Dr. Cha monitored Kethara's vital signs. The treatment would need to be administered directly into her spinal column, allowing the modified bacteriophages to spread throughout her nervous system. "Pulse is steady," Dr. Cha reported. "Brain activity shows she's still in significant pain even while unconscious." "That's about to change," Dr. Nam said as she inserted the injection needle. The treatment began slowly. The pale blue liquid flowed into Kethara's spine, carrying with it the combined efforts of human science and sacrifice. For the first few minutes, nothing seemed to happen. Then the parasites began to react. The crystalline creatures started pulsing faster and brighter. Kethara's body tensed as waves of even more intense pain washed over her. Her heart rate spiked dangerously high. "The parasites are fighting back," Dr. Cha said, his voice tense with worry. "They're increasing their neural output. If this continues, her brain could shut down from overload. How long before the bacteriophages take effect? Captain Lee asked. Unknown, Dr. Nam admitted. This is completely experimental. Medic Sun Hee Ro was monitoring the alien's other vital signs. Breathing is becoming irregular. Blood pressure is dropping. For 10 agonizing minutes, Cathara's condition grew worse. The parasites seemed to sense the threat to their existence and were draining as much life as possible before they were destroyed. Her pale blue eyes opened briefly, showing nothing but pure agony, before closing again. Technician Kyung-Ho Bae was tracking the treatment's progress on his specialized scanners. I'm seeing some cellular changes in the parasite structures. They might be starting to break down. Confirmed, Dr. Cha said, studying his own readings. The protein matrix is becoming unstable in several locations. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Jae-sung's voice came over the communications system. Council ships have arrived. They're demanding entry to the facility. I've activated our security barriers, but they won't hold for long. Through the facility's small windows, they could see the massive shapes of Galactic Council enforcement vessels hovering overhead. Spotlights blazed down from the ships, turning the colony's streets bright as day. We need more time, Dr. Nam said desperately. I'll buy you some, Captain Lee said. He headed for the facility's communication system. Minutes later, his voice echoed across the colony's public address system. This is Captain Lee Dongmin of the Earth vessel Perseverance. We are currently attempting to save the life of a being that the Galactic Council has abandoned to die. We ask for your patience while we complete this humanitarian mission. The response from the colony's residents was immediate. Hundreds of people poured out of their homes and businesses, forming a human barrier around the medical facility. They locked arms and faced the council ships with determination. Back in the isolation room, the treatment was beginning to work. One by one, the crystalline parasites were losing their hold on Cathara's nervous system. As each parasite died, its light faded and it crumbled away from her body. It's working, Dr. Cha said with amazement. The bacteriophages are breaking down the parasite structure without damaging her natural tissue. Cathara's vital signs began to stabilize. Her heart rate dropped to normal levels. Her breathing became deep and regular. For the first time in months, her face showed peace instead of pain. Dr. Nam monitored the progress carefully. 90% of the parasites are gone. The remaining ones are too damaged to survive much longer. Outside, the standoff between humans and the Galactic Council continued. The Council ships had weapons that could level the entire colony, but they hesitated to fire on civilians. The human protesters knew this and pressed their advantage. The treatment is complete, Dr. Nam announced. All parasites have been neutralized. Cathara's eyes opened slowly. For the first time since her rescue, they showed no pain. She looked around the room, seeing the faces of the humans who had saved her life. She tried to speak, but her voice was weak from months of suffering. Dr. Nam quickly gave her water and waited patiently. Why? Cathara finally whispered. Why did you help me? Captain Lee smiled. Because it was the right thing to do. Above them, the council ships continued to hover threateningly, but their mission was complete. They had proven that human compassion could succeed where galactic indifference had failed. The real test would be what happened next. Dr. Siak Jin-oh had arrived on New Sol Colony just as the treatment began. As the most experienced neural specialist in human space, he had volunteered to monitor Cathara's recovery. What he found amazed him. Her nervous system is regenerating at an incredible rate, he reported to the medical team. The areas where parasites were attached are growing new neural pathways. Cathara had been conscious for 6 hours now. She lay propped up in the medical bed, still weak but no longer in constant pain. Her white fur was slowly returning to its natural luster as her body began to heal. Research assistant Dae-Hai Moon carefully documented every stage of the recovery process. Her detailed notes would be shared freely with medical facilities across the galaxy, ensuring that other victims of Nexus leeches could be saved. The bacteriophages are continuing to clean damaged tissue, Dae-Hai reported. Her body is responding better than we hoped. Outside the facility, the standoff with Galactic Council forces had intensified. More council ships had arrived, creating a small fleet hovering over the colony. But the human protesters had also grown in number. Citizens from neighboring colonies had traveled to New Sol to show their support. Security Chief Jae-sung Kang was coordinating the colony's defenses. Teams led by Sangwoo Jung had set up barriers at all the facility entrances. They were prepared to hold their position, no matter what the council threatened. They're demanding we surrender the patient, Sangwoo reported to Captain Lee. They claim we violated interstellar law by treating her without proper authorization. What's our legal status? Captain Lee asked. Technically, they're right, admitted the colony's legal advisor. But human law takes precedence on human colonies. As long as she's here, she's under our protection. Inside the medical room, Kithara was slowly learning to trust her rescuers. Dr. Nam had explained what the parasites were and how they had been removed. The alien's gratitude was obvious, but so was her confusion. Your species puzzles me, Kithara said in her soft voice. The council representatives told me humans were primitive and violent. What do you think now? Dr. Nam asked. Kithara looked around the room at the humans who had saved her life. I think the council does not understand what primitiveness truly means. Communications Officer Eugene Lee entered with an urgent message. We're receiving transmission requests from news networks across the galaxy. Word about the treatment has spread to other species. What kind of response are we getting? Captain Lee asked. Mixed. Some species are supporting the council's position, but others are asking questions about why their representatives abandoned a suffering being. The real test came when Kethera asked to stand. Dr. O helped her slowly get to her feet. Her legs shook from months of weakness, but she managed to stay upright. The pain is gone, she whispered with wonder. For the first time in so long, I can think clearly. She took a few careful steps around the room. With each movement, her confidence grew. The human medical team watched with pride as their patient regained her strength. Tell us about your people, Dr. Nam said gently. Kethara's expression grew sad. The Lycanes were explorers. We traveled the galaxy in search of new worlds and knowledge. My ship encountered a derelict vessel near the edge of known space. The one carrying the parasites? Captain Lee guessed. Yes, we thought it was a research vessel. By the time we realized what the creatures were, it was too late. They had already infected most of my crew. She paused, the memory clearly painful. I watched my friends die one by one. The parasites kept them alive just long enough to experience maximum suffering. I was the only one who made it to an escape pod. Dr. Min Ho Cha looked up from his analysis station. How long were you infected? 4 months, Kethara replied. 4 months of agony that I thought would never end. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the magnitude of what she had endured. 4 months of constant torture would have driven most beings insane. Yet Kethara had somehow maintained her sanity and will to live. What kept you going? Dr. O asked. Hope, she answered simply. Hope that someone somewhere would refuse to let me die in pain. Her words hit the human team like a physical blow. This was exactly what the Galactic Council had been willing to do. Let her die because it was not profitable to save her. A new alarm sounded throughout the facility. Jae-sung's voice came over the communication system with urgency. Council forces are moving. They're preparing to breach our barriers. Through the windows, they could see armored figures descending from the council ships. The alien soldiers moved with military precision toward the facility's entrances. We need to evacuate her, Sangwoo reported. I have a secure transport ready. No, Kethera said firmly. I will not run anymore. But if they take you back to their station, Captain Lee began. Then the galaxy will see how they treat those who seek help, Kethara interrupted. I am strong enough now to speak for myself. Dr. Nam checked her patient's vital signs one last time. She's stable. The treatment was completely successful. All traces of the parasites are gone. Then we face them together, Captain Lee decided. The first council soldiers reached the facility's main entrance. Sangwoo's security team held their positions behind the barriers, but they were vastly outnumbered. Stand down and surrender the patient, commanded the lead soldier. His voice was electronically amplified and echoed through the facility. We refuse, Captain Lee replied over the communication system. The patient is fully recovered and under human protection. You have violated 17 interstellar treaties. Surrender now or face the consequences. The human protesters outside began chanting. Their voices joined together in a simple message that could be heard throughout the colony. Let her speak. Let her speak. Let her speak. Inside the medical room, Kethera listened to the chanting humans who barely knew her but were willing to fight for her right to be heard. Your species gives me hope for the galaxy, she told Dr. Nam. If there are others suffering as I suffered, perhaps you can save them too. We'll try, Dr. Nam promised. We'll share this treatment with anyone who needs it. The council soldiers had broken through the first barrier. They were now inside the facility, moving methodically toward the medical wing. It's time, Captain Lee said. Are you ready? Cathara stood as straight as her recovering body would allow. I have been ready since you first showed me kindness. The door to the medical room opened and council soldiers poured in. But they stopped short when they saw Cathara standing calmly beside her human rescuers. She was no longer the tortured, dying creature they had abandoned. She was healthy, strong, and ready to tell the galaxy exactly what the Council's compassion was worth. 3 months had passed since Cathara's rescue. She now stood before the full assembly of the Galactic Council, her white fur gleaming with health. The massive chamber was filled with representatives from hundreds of species, all watching as she prepared to give her testimony. Council Representative Zorhan sat in his stone seat, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. He had expected the alien to die quietly, making the entire incident disappear. Instead, she had become a symbol of something the council preferred to ignore. You may begin, announced the council speaker, a floating energy being whose voice echoed through the chamber. Cathara looked out at the assembled aliens. Many of them had been present when she was first brought to Harmony Station. They had watched her suffer and chosen to do nothing. My name is Cathara of the Lycanis, she began. 4 months ago I came to this council seeking help. I was dying from parasites that had infected my entire nervous system. The pain was beyond description. She paused, letting her words sink in. Your medical experts examined me. They confirmed that I was suffering. They confirmed that treatment was possible, and then they chose to let me die because helping me was not profitable. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Some representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The humans found me drifting in space, barely alive. They had never seen my species before. I could offer them nothing in return for their help. Yet they risked everything to save my life. In the observation gallery, Captain Lee Dongmian watched with pride. Beside him sat Dr. Yunji Nam and the rest of the human medical team. They had been invited to witness Cathara's testimony. The humans shared their treatment freely with all who asked, Cathara continued. They did not patent it for profit. They did not restrict it to their own species. They gave it away because they believed that healing should be available to all. This was true. Dr. Nam had established the open medical protocol just 1 week after Cathara's recovery. The anti-parasite treatment was now available at human medical stations throughout the galaxy, free of charge. In the months since my recovery, I have learned something important, Cathara said. The humans call it compassion. They act not because it benefits them, but because it is right. Reporter Haiwan Park was broadcasting the testimony live to human colonies across the galaxy. Her coverage had made Cathara's story known to billions of beings. Since establishing the open medical protocol, humans have treated over 3,000 patients that other medical facilities had given up on, Haiwan reported. Species from across the galaxy are quietly seeking human medical help for conditions the Council deems untreatable. This was also true. Human medical stations had become refugees for the desperate. Beings who had been told their conditions were hopeless traveled vast distances to receive human care. Nurse practitioner Yanwu Seo now ran one of these stations near the Galactic Rim. She had treated patients from dozens of species, many of whom had never encountered humans before. They arrive scared and dying, Yanwu explained in her latest report. They leave healthy and grateful. Word is spreading that humans will help anyone, regardless of species or ability to pay. Back in the council chamber, Cathara was reaching the climax of her testimony. The Galactic Council claims to represent the pinnacle of civilized behavior, she said. Yet when faced with suffering, you calculate costs. When confronted with pain, you debate resources. When shown a dying being, you see only profit margins. The chamber was completely silent now. Every representative was listening intently. The humans taught me that true civilization is not measured by the height of your buildings or the power of your weapons. It is measured by how you treat those who cannot help themselves. She turned to look directly at Zorhan. You had the power to save me, but you chose not to. The humans had less advanced technology, but they found a way. The difference was not in your abilities. It was in your hearts. In the months following her testimony, the political landscape of the galaxy began to shift. Species that had long accepted council authority started questioning their representatives' decisions. The Aquarian Collective was the first to break ranks. Dr. Kyle Ahn, who had argued for treating Cathera at Harmony Station, became their new representative. She immediately proposed new council protocols that would guarantee medical treatment, regardless of species or political status. Other species followed. The silicon-based crystalline hegemony shocked everyone by apologizing publicly for their role in abandoning Cathera. They offered to fund human medical stations throughout their territory. Even some council loyalists began to waver. The insect-like Quillarians, known for their strict adherence to regulations, started quietly referring difficult medical cases to human facilities. Captain Lee received regular reports about these changes from Communications Officer Eugene Lee. The humans had not set out to challenge the council's authority, but their actions had sparked something larger than they ever imagined. 17 species have now requested human medical assistance, Eugene reported. 2 have asked us to establish permanent medical stations in their systems. The council tried to maintain control by issuing new regulations restricting human medical activities. But enforcement proved difficult when so many species were openly supporting human efforts. 6 months after her recovery, Cathera had become an unofficial ambassador between her people and humanity. The Lycanes, grateful for human compassion, had become some of humanity's strongest allies. She often visited human medical stations, sharing her story with new patients who had been abandoned by their own governments. Her presence gave them hope that recovery was possible. "The humans saved more than my life," she would tell them. "They saved my faith in what intelligent beings can accomplish when they choose compassion over calculation." Dr. Nam had expanded her underground facility into a full medical complex. Volunteers from across human space came to work alongside alien patients, learning that healing knew no species boundaries. The final vindication came when Captain Lee received an unexpected transmission. It was from a young Aquarian whose child had been cured of a genetic disorder using the modified bacteriophage treatment. "Your species showed us what we had forgotten," the Aquarian parent said, "that every life has value, regardless of its origin or status." As Captain Lee stood on the bridge of the Perseverance, looking out at the stars, he reflected on everything that had changed. The galaxy was still far from perfect. There was still suffering, still injustice, still beings who calculated the worth of life in credits and resources. But now there was also hope. Scattered throughout the galaxy were human medical stations where anyone could find healing, where the question was never, "Can you pay?" but always, "How can we help?" Cathera joined him on the bridge, her white fur catching the starlight. She was no longer the tortured, dying alien they had rescued. She was healthy, strong, and determined to ensure that no one else would suffer as she had suffered. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "The future," Captain Lee replied, "and how sometimes the smallest act of compassion can change everything." Together, they watched the stars, knowing that somewhere among them, other beings were discovering what humans had always known, that helping others was not a burden to be calculated, but a privilege to be embraced. The galaxy was learning that humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology or their military might. It was their refusal to abandon hope, even when everyone else had given up. And in medical stations across known space, that hope was healing the galaxy one patient at a time.